Okay, I think that there's a link not working. So I apologize, I'll fix that. So let's go back and review some things about receptive language. So there is a language therapy project, and oh, this one link isn't working. Oh, it comes up in the doc viewer. Okay, I'll fix that. So a couple people had asked, so let's, whoops, 1 second. Excuse me, sorry about that. Okay, so module 6. So receptive language therapy. So what we're doing this week is really kind of what you're coming up with is a session plan to work on a goal. So you guys as SLPAs, this will be the bulk of what you do. You'll get a report with some goals. So you'll get client, we'll call him, you know, make up a name, Brian. Okay, so you get Brian, you'll read his goals, and then you kind of come up with a session plan to address those goals. So that's essentially what you're doing in this. So a couple different things that, and I'll fix the choice questions. I apologize, that didn't come up. So this is just review of receptive language. So we've talked about receptive language, and really what a lot of times when you read a goal, that's where you do need to communicate with your supervisor. What is this goal really asking me to do? So a lot of times they're addressing one of these skills. So attention and concentration, pre-language skills. So it might be gestures, it might be facial expressions or imitation. So a lot of times, here's one, I've had several SLPAs ask me, you know, Brian will imitate an action 4 out of 5 times, you know, across 3 sessions. So what we're looking for is if I do an action, can Brian imitate it for me? Now, the reason why that's important is that's kind of that precursor to, can I say a word, can they imitate? So learning that skill of imitation is an important building block for language. So like I said, sometimes you'll see some of these goals and they're real goofy. So a lot of times goals that I view as goofy, and that's kind of my, just kind of like, what are they really asking me here? Those are the goals I call goofy. It's usually to address one of these precursor skills, so play skills. So you might even see your SLP write a goal, you know, Brian will use toys in an appropriate manner, or pretend play toys in an appropriate manner. Now, what are we looking for? Are we perfection? No. What we're looking for, does the toys of food, do they understand that's might be food, and they might do play kitchen, or they might play that they're eating breakfast or something. So those are definitely some things that are targeting some of these precursor skills. So a lot of times you need these skills before you can answer WH comprehension questions. So again, and it depends on the age and what's the basis. So this is what I like, you know, why do we need these? Why are we working on these skills? And then what can be done to improve receptive language? So here's some things that we do in a therapy session. We might wait for eye contact. So I don't know, I was just reading an article about eye contact. And I go back and forth on some of this. For me, what I value is more of that attention piece. And each SLP kind of has their take on how much eye contact is demanded. But again, those are conversations you'll be having on a regular basis. And then some other things, I try to make sure if I can engage them with their eye contact, I try, you know, they look at me, I'm looking at them. And then minimal instructions. So the biggest thing I think SLPAs do is they get so wordy. There's too many words thrown at a client at one time. And this is true for all ages. This isn't just true for our young clients. This is true for our older clients too. So sometimes we need to, you know, my co-therapist, she calls it the caveman talk, really reduce the amount of words we're using, and that's where we're trying to simplify the language. Yeah, instead of like, example to me, and this is really where we work on verbal chunking information. So breaking directions down into steps, that's really those chunking verbal bits of information. It's also simplifying the language. So definitely what I kind of have to remember too, when I work with a client, I need to pair a lot of times my verbal closer to theirs. So if they're at the one word level, I better keep my utterances closer to, you know, 2 or 3 if I can. Again, that's not always possible, but a lot of times they've got processing and they're just processing each word one at a time. A lot of times we need to repeat. Today was a rough day, I'll have to say. We had our kindergarten through our 3rd grade, and we had 1st through 3rd returning today. And we have one, you know, some of my clients with real severe autism, I was expecting some major behaviors and maybe some regression in skills. But what we really worked with this particular student is really paring down our verbal. And today I had to catch myself several times. I'm trying to give him, you know, hands down, no hands, like, you know, sit down, or I noticed he sit on chair, so I'd be like on chair, instead of sit down in your seat, you know, hands to yourself, it's on, you know, sit down, chair please, or whatever it was. I was really trying to work on that with this particular student today. And really what you see is a lot of times is they're more responsive to you. And then hopefully, you know, you can start to increase your length of utterances. But we really have to work on simplifying the language, repeating, first, then. So if you ever heard this concept, you will. If you haven't heard about it, you will. Hopefully you have, possibly before me, but maybe not. So first, then. So a lot of times we give clients, first you do this, then you'll do this. So we're just working on that simple sequencing task. Okay, what's the first task? Then my second. It's really important for them to organize their life, follow kind of a set routine, follow a set of sequential things in order. So first, then we use quite a bit. Clarify, so definitely working on making sure they understand the words. So for instance, I said hallway today, and I realized this poor student didn't understand what I meant when I said hallway. So I'm trying to clarify what I mean by the hallway. You know, he's like, oh, just walk over there. Yes, this is the hallway, we're walking over there. So a lot of times we as therapists and parents and other people that are with children, we take for granted and we think they know. So a lot of times we're clarifying information or defining information. And that's important for us to do in a session, because when we realize they're not understanding, especially with receptive language, okay, what other words can I use? What other ways can I show them? So that's where that multi-sensory piece can come in also. So, you know, showing, a lot of times modeling, we call that modeling, showing, modeling, kind of used interchangeably, visual aids. So then let me clarify. So we've had a couple use of this word. So when we as therapists talk about visual aids, there's a lot of different things that can be visual aids. And a visual aid isn't always a picture. It can be an object. It can be, you know, someone's response, body language. So again, when we're looking at cueing, our clients that we're working with, sometimes I'll give them a frowny face. I'll give them, you know, kind of like, hey, let's think about that. Sometimes I use different emotions on my face to give them that visual aid. Or sometimes it's just like, hey, that was great, good job. They need some kind of visual to show they're on the right track or they're not on the right track, and it's not always a picture. So someone said visual aids are only pictures. I'm not sure if I think it was someone in this class. And pictures is one component of visual aids, but a lot of times it's an object. A lot of times when we're looking at visual aids in, let's say, a home-based environment, it's like, what do we have that triggers that? So, you know, you might use this in your life. Hey, if I put, you know, my shoes over here, I'll remember this. Or if, for me, I've been half virtual, half I'm starting to go back in. So I have some things at home and I try to remember what to bring into, you know, my work. And I'm like, okay, I need to put this here so I don't forget it. So what's my visual aids that I need for myself to remember or to cue myself? So sometimes a visual aid can be an object too. So just know there's kind of, if it's something visual that uses as a cue, reminder, something, that's a visual aid. And then even a timer. So somebody asked about timers. And the reason why I say that, a lot of times we use timers in therapy. We're trying to give some kind of defined time. So definitely that also can be a visual aid also. So describing. So a lot of times what we do too is sometimes when we're working with a client, we're giving that verbal commentary, describing what we're doing to give them that language piece. And again, sometimes we're working on those concepts. So like today, sit down, and then I was like, okay, down. Trying to say down, he's on the floor. To him, down means the floor. So I'm like, okay, on chair. So then I was trying to change my word today with this guy. And he was so cute because he finally kind of repeated to me. And we had this like place to put the iPads and stuff. And I forget, I think he was trying to say stand, but it on and meaning like put the iPad up. That's like what that word meant to him. And it was cute because I'm like, okay, he understands the concept on. Down was not the right cue for him. So, just kind of making some of those adjustments. And those are things that you write down to help you remember, to help you work more efficiently with the client. And what's hard about this project, so a lot of people are like, am I just supposed to make it up? Yes, ideally when you're working with an actual real person, you have some ideas. Hey, so-and-so is interested in cars, they have this hobby, or they like reading recipes. So what was always fun, and gosh, I can't tell you enough how much recipes are great for our adult population. I think food is a language all of us speak. So definitely some things that we kind of build upon a client's preferences or interests. So it is hard when you don't actually have that real person in front of you. So you kind of, you can kind of make up your own conditions. Like so-and-so likes dinosaurs. Okay, we're going to do this. Or so-and-so likes music. So we're going to do this activity to target this goal. So yes, you can do that. So someone asked, can I, make some more, indicators for this person? Yes. If you feel like you need that to come up with an activity, feel free to do so. So what are activities that can improve receptive language? So I like this document. I feel like it's a really nice, concise summary for you guys. So here's some fun things. Simon Says, that's a fun game we like to do. An obstacle course is really fun. That's been something fun I enjoy doing. Kind of a special activity. I really love it when I can do it with the OT or the PT. So developmental preschool is one where we do an obstacle course quite a bit. So many language concepts in that, as well as kind of some of those tactile games, that feeling bag. So we have this one, Ned's Head. I don't know if anybody's seen it. I have about 4 of these. I have 2 at home, one at each of my schools. But that's really essentially like the mystery box. You put your hand in, what are you feeling? Can you describe it? Lots of fun language activities, but on Ned's Head, they kind of have some gross stuff. They got like a Q-tip and, I can't think, throw up, like plastic vomit or something. It's really gross. But that's really engaging for a lot of our young clients anyways. But truly, books, I can't say enough about language and literacy. So reading a book together, talking about some of the words, definitely exposing them to that literacy piece is super important, because what do we know? Definitely kids with language disorders and speech problems, they're at very high risk for decreased literacy skills. So books are always never a bad idea. Books are always usually a good idea. Yeah, and like other day-to-day activities that you do. Even something simple as getting something out of your backpack. Hey, we got something in the backpack. Easy to play, feel the game. the field game, you know, what's in your backpack? Oh my goodness. Or even what I like to do, sometimes I like to do it and I like to give them clues. So many of our young clients respond to being in charge and, you know, being the teacher, so to speak. So a lot of times, sometimes role-playing activities are really great. You work on a lot of language skills as well as social skills. So, and this is just why, you know, why should I seek therapy if you notice difficulties? Okay. So if we're not working with receptive language, this is what we see happening with your average person who maybe does have some pretty significant receptive language difficulties. We know social interactions can be much more challenging for them. Completing tests, any academic task can be very difficulty. Applying for jobs, doing an application as well as doing a job interview can definitely be a detriment if they've got some difficulties with receptive language, as well as, you know, giving directions to find unfamiliar or new places. So are they able to kind of what I call clarify and navigate their environment, kind of ask and seek what they don't know? But sometimes with receptive language, it's like they don't know what they don't know. It's really hard for them to do that, as well as developing reading and writing skills. So what we see is there's usually a very high direct correlation. Poor receptive language skills can definitely negatively impact reading and writing skills. So reading and writing skills are what I call basic skills. You need to be able to read at a certain level and write at a certain level, regardless of what you plan to do in your future. So, and I don't mean just motor writing. A lot of times motor writing might be challenging, but can they type out a sentence? Can they formulate a sentence? Can they put a thought on paper? So definitely what we see is difficulties in receptive language can result in difficulties in these areas. So what are some other activities? So let's talk about some activities. So what's my go-to? So let's take an adult. My go-to usually is usually when you're working with an adult, they can answer some simple basic information, or with a caregiver that can answer, hey, before their stroke, you know, what's something they would like to do? So basically I go for, you know, our older clientele, you know, what do they like to do on the weekends? Do they go to restaurants? Do they go to farmers markets? Do they go play golf? Like there's a lot of language-based activities you can do and start there. So I usually always, regardless of age, like I said, the older adults, our adult clientele, it's really easy to get some input on what they like, what, you know, what are their interests. Usually they have a family member that can support and give you that information pretty clearly, or, you know, they have a career. So obviously, what is their career? What are they into? A lot of times their career will indicate something that they like. So it's really easy, I think, when we're looking at our adult population to come up with a plan. Shoot, our cell phones, helping our older clientele, you know, operate and communicate on a cell phone. That's, you know, that's really a easy place to start. And then I'm looking at what I'd say maybe our adolescent group. Usually what I'm looking at, what's going to be functional? What is their long-term goal? What's their family's long-term goal? And I go from there. There's usually some basic categories that are easy with our adolescent group. Music, that's usually an easy one. There was a parent I just saw, I hadn't seen this family in a particular long time, and this particular student I had, he was like a 7th, 8th grader, and he would sing all the time. And he was on the spectrum. He definitely had some challenges, but, you know, I'm trying to work on inferential language, like inferencing goals. And he just was really hard to engage. And so I let him, you know, look up song lyrics. Okay, what do you think this means? We did intended inferential activities with a lot of song lyrics, especially songs he would like to sing. And they were, you know, usually he wasn't singing songs that were not school appropriate, which was good. That's not always the case. But just looking up, and it's so funny, his mom was telling me, he still talks about that. Like he still will write down song lyrics and try to get the intended meaning of them. So I thought that was great to hear. So we really try to start at the crux of what do they like, and then we build on that, and then we can expand from that. So Usually on the spectrum, our clients on the spectrum, they have a kind of defined thing that they like, you know. So there's just some things there. So I really like this one. I think it really helps with kind of organizing. What am I going to do? What are some activities that support language? So hold on, let me click out. Let me open up another. So someone's asked, what are we doing? So let me open up the assignment. There's some great articles. Do the memory strategies open up for you guys? Can anybody see this? Who's tried to open it? Hopefully this might be one that doesn't open for everybody. So there's some great things that we work on that kind of target some of that receptive language piece and how to help target it in a session. So like repetition, categorization, sometimes working on that task of, okay, what is this related to? What's that related to? Teaching them how to write it down. Because a lot of times what we know is receptive language, they also might have memory issues. And that's really, this bodes really well for our adult population. After a stroke, we start seeing difficulties with executive function also. Hold on, stop one. Let me open up a new one. Okay, good. Someone could see memory strategy. Go back to. Okay, receptive language projects. So here's what I need to post goals. I think someone already submitted one and they just used a random goal. That was fine. So you're gonna make a video too. So someone asked, do I need to do video of a session, a fake session? No, that's not what I'm asking you to. I'm asking you just to explain your session. So you're gonna pick a goal. So you'll see that, I will repost that. So a goal, just pick one goal. So what you're looking for is picking the goal, what in my plan, so what in my session plan am I looking at to target this goal? And here's the other part, I've kind of gone back and forth. You can pick the age group. So a lot of times when we're looking at age groups, and I say age groups, I mean like preschool age, kindergarten, primary age, 4 through 6 is kind of that, later elementary, middle school, high school, or adult. So a lot of the goals can apply to a 3-year-old and a 50-year-old. So, following a 2-step direction, you'll see that goal at preschool and you'll see that in adult rehab. So something, like I said, that's the most common receptive language goal you'll see. And really what we're trying to do is, what are we going to do to target this skill? Following 2-step directions. What in a session am I going to set up to address this goal? Or answering WH questions. So answering WH questions can occur at 3 years old. It can occur at, 80 years old. So what am I going to do in a session to target this goal based on the age group? So what you'll find, and I found this interesting when I started as an SLPA reading goals. Some of the goals are the same regardless of the age group. We're always working on it. It's just at a different level. So for instance, oh wait, hold on. You guys can't see my screen share. One second. Yes. So in the video, you are explaining in your session, what are you going to do? What are some things that you have in the session that you'll use? So for instance, last semester, somebody did a whole, we're going to do a simple making a snack. So they picked the adult group and it was like sequencing a task or retelling, I forget what it was, but anyway, no, retelling is expressive, but whatever it was, basically she did it at a level of an adult and it was a very basic, simple task. What I'm looking for, so a lot of people are like, oh, I want it to be good. I'm not looking at anything, I mean, have some thought into it, but I'm not looking for anything elaborate. And I'm not looking for anything super cutesy unless that's your style. So for me, I'm kind of what I call, there's some things I do that are cutesy. So if you look on all these Instagram, some of these SLPs and you know, some of their blogs, they have a lot of cutesy things. I tend to go for things that are more functional. What's something functional for somebody down the road? What's my, when I look at my high school, so I love my high school population. That's not everybody's favorite. What I'm looking for are really basic functional things for them to do. So my stuff isn't really cutesy, it's more basic, what I would call basic functional tasks and how to make it engaging for them. So you can take a simple activity. Are you showing me, are you trying to use some visual strategies? Are you trying to use some things that reinforce the skill I'm teaching them? So for instance, if you need some support on how do I break down this goal, that's where I like looking at some of the read and review on in this module. It kind of tells you, okay, did I reinforce? Did I have an opportunity to do something, you know, repetitive? For me, sometimes it gets boring, but it's really important for our clients who have difficulties with receptive language that is repetitive to help them learn. Is it multi-modality? Do we have kind of different, is it tactile? Is it auditory? Is there other kind of stimuli to kind of help with that multi-sensory component of teaching? So a lot of times too, what we're looking for, can I fade the cueing? So if we have to do something that has such extensive cueing, then we can't fade the prompts to help them do it independently. So the goal is usually we're providing a lot of support, lots of prompts, and then we're going to try to scale back. Can they do it without the prompts? Do they need all these reminders? And then that's where you kind of what I call get the sweet spot. How much support do they need to complete the task or meet the goal? And how much can they do independently? And then is their ability to improve or not improve? And that's where you will get a lot of input from your supervisor, or you will ask your supervisor for input. So again, I'm not looking for extravagant things or a million activities. So just look at it. Is there enough activities to fulfill the session? Is there enough things that I'm doing in the session to target the goal? Now, again, sometimes you start a session and it goes, we're not even at square one. We can't even get to the first step. So then you got to be able to scale it back. So what I'm really looking for too is, can you take the session plan and then can you adapt it quickly based on how things go? So every now and then you'll plan something, you're like, wow, they breezed right through that. You know, they did everything perfect. That was not really challenging for them. So therapy should be a certain level of challenge and a certain level of mastery. So we keep, you know, you kind of go, make it challenging, then they get up and then they kind of are doing well, and then we make it challenging. So you always need to be able to think about whatever you plan in a session, how can I make it more difficult? And then how can I make it easier? And I'm talking 3 or 4 steps more difficult or 3 or 4 steps easier. So sometimes you make your best educated guess and sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. So even myself now as a therapist, gosh, I'm going on 25 years, I'll have a session that'll just be a disaster. They couldn't even do step 1. Okay, did I adapt? Did I do something else meaningful in the session? Or, hey, they just raced through that. Do I have something? What's the next step? So that's what you always have to be thinking. So that's where the art of therapy comes in. How much can I break it down into smaller steps? How much can I scaffold? So scaffolding is another word that, you know, you hear, and it's really meaning how can you break it down into smaller steps to build them up? So that's what I'm looking for. Can you problem solve in a session when things are going wonderful and when things are not going so well? And so that's kind of what I'm looking for. So you'll see on the session plan, I guess it wasn't coming up, of here's my activity, here's my sequence of things, here's my materials. Okay, how am I going to make it easier and how am I going to make it harder? So what I'm really looking for in that critical piece of, can you take a simple activity and expand on it or simplify it? Because that's really what you have to do in each session with a client. And you got to problem solve. Sometimes things happen. So I'm like, oh gosh, I gave this kid, is like today, I kept saying sit down, which was only a 2-word utterance. I was trying to keep my utterances short. But when I sat down, that triggered him the floor. Last thing I wanted this kid was on the floor. So I'm like, okay, I need to change my verbiage. So we have to be aware of things that we're doing in the session to also modify our behavior too. So that's why when you have a session and you're planning it, you've got to definitely take note, okay? Last time I was too wordy. How can I reduce my directions? How can I review the vocabulary? So certain kids too, you'll say a word and you think they know, so you got to constantly check for understanding too. Okay, do you know what that means? Like what I say with my high schoolers, self-advocacy and communicating your needs. Okay, I think that they would know what that means, but most of the time they don't. I have to really explain, and when I say communicate your needs, what am I talking about? Or some other things like, what was another word today that I was like, oh, I got to explain that. They said hallway was one I had to explain. There's another one. Something else happened today. I'm like, I said the courtyard. I said, oh, just walk to the courtyard. Gosh, arrival and dismissal today was challenging. One of the most challenging ones I've had in a really long time. And I said the courtyard, and the kid clearly didn't understand what the courtyard was. So explaining that. And what you'll find is that's where you'll take some notes and you'll notice, and then you'll tell your supervisor, hey, it seems like there's vocabulary they aren't knowing. Like, should I review vocabulary? Should I review maybe verbs? So sometimes what we find too with receptive language, we kind of get noun based, but a lot of times they're missing the verbs. So you'll see the list of goals. So I know, I'm sorry, it's not coming up, but I'll give you the goals and what needs to be in your session plan. And then the video is you explaining it. So that's really what I'm looking for. Can you explain what you're going to do in a session? Because that's all you will do as an SLPA. You will plan a session, you will read a goal, plan a session based on the goal, and then review what you're doing with your supervisor. And then obviously, I can't have you recap anything because you haven't done it, but that's what you'll do in your practicum. Hey, I planned this session, this is what happened. So is everyone clear on the purpose of this? I'm not looking for extravagant, elaborate things. I mean, they're fine, don't get me wrong, but what I'm looking for is, can you look at a goal, plan a session to address the goal, make it age appropriate for your age group, and then can you explain it in a video? Is everybody clear on all those things? I will repost. I apologize, the therapy project wasn't coming up. Okay. Oh, okay. I thought I had a video on how to upload to YouTube. I'm pretty sure we have one. I will post it. So yeah, you're just explaining the lesson plan. Any other questions? If not, that's the crux of what's due this week. And I usually give you guys more time. So yes, I apologize. I didn't put the session plan template up. So I've changed it again. I apologize. I'll post it tonight. So that should all be there tonight with the goals and the session plan, okay? All right, thanks guys. I appreciate everyone joining me tonight. I know the debates on everything was real, I think people are interested in.